Hi, this is Mike from BandLabs, and in this video we're going to make a psytrance beat in BandLab's free online DAW. You can open this project yourself with the link in the video description, and if you find this guide useful, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to be the first to know when new videos drop. I begin by setting the project tempo to 138 beats per minute, and the project key to F-sharp minor. Psytrance is all about the rhythm, so I'm going to start by making a drum part. I add a new virtual instrument track and set it to drums, drum pads, new house kit. I sequence the kick on every beat. And open hats between the beats. I duplicate this out for the whole 4-bar sequence. To duplicate MIDI notes or clips in BandLab, hold Option on Mac or Alt on Windows and drag them over. I want to add a clap too, but I don't feel like the clap in this kit is the right kind of sound, so I'm going to look at BandLab sounds for something more appropriate. In BandLab sounds, I enter clap into the text search field. Clap 3 one-shot WC hip-hop is the kind of sound I'm looking for. So I create a new sampler track and drag it into the first slot. I sequence it to play on the second and fourth beats of each bar. The clap isn't tight enough around the rest of the beat for my taste, so I drag the sample start marker to the right a little, which gives it a tighter feel. I turn both tracks down to -6 dB to give me more headroom to add other elements to the mix. Next, I want a bass line to drive the track. I add an instrument track and this time set it to basses, synth basses, electro saw bass. I turn this track down to -10.5 dB. I program a sequence that plays on the first, third, and fourth 16th note of each beat. I want some filter movement on this sound, so in the effects panel I add a modulation auto-wah effect. I put this in positive mode with a depth of 17, a filter amount of 17, and a release around 230 milliseconds. Next, I'd like a stab sound. I add an instrument track, selecting keyboards, synth keys, trance pluck. I set this track to -6 dB. I program in a repeating 1-bar rhythmic pattern. I want this to sound a little more interesting, so I add a delay, filter echo effect, setting the mix to 18%, the delay to 67 milliseconds, the feedback to 60, and the cutoff to 825 Hz. This adds a kind of filtered slapback delay effect. I also add a reverb, studio reverb, setting the color to 2.0 and the size to 2.8. At this point, the project needs a touch of melody, so I add an instrument track and set it to keyboards, Synth Leads, 2-saw detune. I set this track to -4.5 dB. I program in a simple lick that hits the root, a perfect fifth and the root again, the minor seventh, a perfect fourth, and the minor seventh. To get that stretchy trance sound, I add a tone multi-filter. Put it into high-pass mode, and set the Q to 3.9. I bring up the automation lanes, and select the multi-filter frequency lane. I add some automation that lightly filters the first part of the riff out, and lightly filters the second part back in. This sound will work well with delay, so I add a filter echo effect, setting the delay to 435 milliseconds, and the feedback to 85%. I also apply a studio reverb. I'd also like an arpeggiator style pattern, so I add another instrument track, and again select Keyboards, Synth Leads, 2-saw detune. I turn this track down to -15 dB, and sequence in an 8th note arpeggiated pattern that plays the root, the minor third, the perfect fourth, and the perfect fifth. We're playing the octave above the existing 2-saw detune part, but I'd still like to differentiate the sound a bit. I add a modulation chorus ensemble effect, setting the depth to 2.4. Then I add a filter echo, with the delay set to 435 milliseconds. Again, I add a studio reverb. Now it's time to add some effects to help segue between sections. I'd like to use a drum fill, so I open BandLab's Sounds and select the Loops tab. Enter Fill into the text search field, and set the genre filter to electronic. TG Progressive House 128 Drum Fill 01 is ideal, so I drag it into the project on the last bar of the section. I set this track to -2 dB. I'd also like an impact effect, so I enter impact into the text search field. I drag Shell Shock Impact onto the first beat of the section and turn the track down to -6.5 dB. I don't want the low end of the sound to interfere with the kick and bass, so I add a multi-filter, put it in high-pass mode, and set the frequency to around 230 Hz. For the arrangement, I begin with the drums and bass, bringing the clap in after 8 bars. I then add a stab on bar 17. On bar 33, I bring in the lead. We then have a breakdown where the arp and the lead play. The beats and bass then drop. After 16 bars, I swap out the arp with the stab. For the outro, it's just the beats and bass. You can fork this project and make your own version of it using the link in the video description. Have fun!